Hey guys, it's me, Sam Stein, managing editor at the Bulwark, and I am joined by Andrew Egger, who is the author of Morning Shots. We're coming to you on Sunday afternoon. Andrew, for some reasons, in the office, but that's just because he's diligent. We're going to be talking about pretty somber news that passed the transom today. Ex President Joe Biden has been diagnosed with cancer. This was the statement from his press person. Quote, last week, President Joe Biden was seen for a new finding of a prostate nodule after experiencing increasing urinary symptoms. On Friday, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, characterized by a Gleason score of 9, grade group 5, with metastasis to the bone. While this represents a more aggressive form of the disease, the cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, which allows for effective management. The president and his family are reviewing treatment options with his physicians. So, I mean, obviously, this is fairly saddening news for the ex president and the people who love him. It's unavoidably coming amid a very difficult stretch for him about his presidency and whether he was fit for service during it. And I'm not totally sure, honestly, how this or if this should affect that conversation. But I have a couple thoughts. The first, and Andrew, you can jump in whenever you want, is that you feel for the guy on a human level, put aside the politics, and obviously that's totally separate and I think ripe for criticism, of course. But it's a tragic thing to happen, especially for someone whose family's been snake bitten by cancer the way his has. Two is, and I think this does relate to the conversation we were having prior to this announcement about his frailty, his ability to serve, is that we're not at a place, I think, where we're totally comfortable reporting on or talking about age and how it impacts politics. And I know it feels like we are because we've been talking about it for like months now. But I think, if anything, the publication of this book, Original Sin, this diagnosis, and a whole host of other things shows that we're just a little bit. We still treat it a little bit taboo, I think, and it's uncomfortable for us to outwardly address it. And I understand why, but it's something that I think we need to get over and talk more frankly about. Anyways, those are my two initial thoughts. I know this is a tricky subject, and so I appreciate people understanding that, maybe it's not totally fleshed out, and maybe you're going to be upset with something we say, but we're just trying to handle it in real time. Andrew, what do you make of just the succession of news here for Joe Biden? Obviously tragic.
Yeah, just so I guess just a few things. I mean, one, I mean, it's a little hard for us to talk about because we are obviously political reporters. We
Right.
know as much about kind of the ins and outs of the health diagnosis as anybody does, or as any other layman, like relative bozo on the subject does. I think that, I mean, obviously it's difficult news. I guess the small mercy here is that he is getting this news and we're getting this news in his post presidency. I mean, it would be a much more
Right.
fraught thing if this had happened a year ago. If this, I mean, imagine just in addition to all of the kind of like personal difficulty here and all the sort of familial pain and all those sorts of things, having to juggle all of this in addition to the burden of having to run the country, which, I mean, it's just kind of like a commonplace to talk about how much that burden puts pressure on a person, how much it ages a person throughout
Right.
their term. um and so that's one,
Well, it's
kind of small
interesting.
mercy.
Just to pick on that, it's like we've had presidents who have served in incredible distress before,
Mhm.
like Woodrow Wilson. Kennedy was serving with incredible distress. Nixon was beset by demons and potentially alcoholism, right? Like, so it's not that this is totally abnormal, but there's something that feels oddly different in a way. Now, I agree with you. Thank God he wasn't in office when this happened.
Well,
Um,
but this
but
is,
go
I mean,
ahead.
this is the whole thing about being the oldest president ever, or in a
Exactly.
long time. And
Yeah.
like the baseline of vigor and like even all things going quite well, it was kind of a roll of the dice on any given day, like how kind of up to it he was going to be. And obviously this, just dramatically complicates that in a way that would not have necessarily afflicted those other presidents.
Well, I mean, this clearly obviously brings home the point that he should never have announced he was running for a second term. I mean, that's I mean, I'm not trying to be crude about it, but you know, everything that's been reported this past couple weeks, the release of the Robert Hur audio, even the testimonials of Democrats who now are sort of open to the reckoning that they got it completely wrong, it all points in the same direction, which is he should have taken a one-term pledge, should have never had said I was going to run again, and should have recognized that at 80 years old, you're at a heightened risk for things like this to happen. You're rolling the dice.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and hopefully, at the very least, we can finally put to bed the sort of ridiculous exercise of any time the president or the former president is in an interview or whatever, kind of having him go through that gauntlet of like, well, should you have dropped out? Should you have run again? Making
Right.
him trot out that answer of, oh, I think I could have won if I'd run again. I mean, just that whole horrible. Like, at no point was that a useful exercise for anything, because what's the guy supposed to say?
Yeah,
But
he was
but
never going to say, "Yeah, I shouldn't have run."
yeah.
Like, no, I mean, he played the game, and frankly, that was deceitful, right? Like, I think he should have been more honest about his frailties, and certainly the people around him should have been. I do agree with that.
Yeah, I just go around and around on that, because on the one hand, yes, obviously, I mean, obviously, it is the case that he hung on way too long,
Yeah,
and that especially the people around him were like actively covering for him in various ways, and yet it's very difficult. I mean, to put yourself in his shoes and to say, I mean, like any aging professional who's like losing their fastball, where
sure.
they're just like, no, I still got it in me, I can still do it, I'm still there,
But
and the
that's
people
so
who are
that's where yes, and but that's where I get back to this whole thing of like it's taboo, right? Like Steve Scale, longtime Biden advisor, ran Super PAC for him, never worked in the White House, but was one of the bigger online fans and fans, period. He wrote a piece for us where he's like, I think the crux of one of the parts is like they failed to recognize that they would have been rewarded had they just acknowledged the frailty. I mean, they were very afraid of being like, no, he can't. He's not going to serve a second term. This is just a transition presidency for real. And Steve writes that, like, in fact, had he done that, had he been open about, like, look, I probably could give it a go, but I'm going to be like responsible. And, I'm old and you deserve someone younger. Steve's point is that had he done lines like that, had he made that his posture, that he would have been rewarded for the public for his honesty. And they would have rallied to his side. And I mean, you talk about a sports analogy, but I do think there's something to it. It's like, when it seems like it's like the aging athlete's last season, and they've announced that they're going to retire, like there is some sort of camaraderie that is felt. There is a nostalgia that almost kicks in. So I don't know. Who knows if it translates in politics? But you don't really have that much in
yeah,
politics because people
yeah.
just feel like they are important, too important to retire.
Yeah, and it was just difficult as well, because I mean, imagine if it had been the other way around. Imagine if like if the cancer diagnosis that we got the news of today, if that had come a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, and it was only just now that like the obvious kind of like aging was catching up to him mentally and in terms of his
Right.
stamina and all. I mean, I think it's hard to do a counterfactual, but I think you might have seen a different story. I mean, like if the president had publicly been diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer, that's the kind of thing people
Right.
kind of wrap their heads around. Whereas, one of the problems with the kind of aging and the gradual slipping and all of that we kind of all saw over the last year, is that's the kind of thing that it's so easy for everyone to kind of live in denial about, right? I mean, and especially the
Yeah.
person who's involved.
The other thing about that though, and which kind of has tripped me up a little bit, is like in a way you can say, okay, maybe he is physically not where he ever was and is slipping badly, but so long as he's mentally there, right? Like that's what counts, right? Like, and so for a little while, and I'm just dipping back into my time editing the White House beat around this. For a little while, like the stories were around sort of the physical stuff, right? It was like, oh, he needs the shorter staircase. He's wearing
Hmm.
these different sneakers. He's, not really, doing 3 or 4 nights in a row overseas. He's ducking out on the last night. Like he's tired more. Like, and that's bad. Obviously, it's not great. But you can sort of put that into a different bucket than the mental stuff. The mental stuff was always harder for us to kind of cover because you'd have slippages in interviews and you'd have gaffes, and of course that was like you would write about it, but it didn't never felt like we could. I don't know. I don't want to say never felt, but it was hard to come to some sort of consensus opinion about where he was on a mental scale
Yeah,
up until the
the
debate.
debate. Yeah.
And then it became very obvious. I mean, there were certainly signs and we wrote about them, but it just, those two buckets were always hard to kind of put together. Does that, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the other element of it is just, seeing the whole kind of like political apparatus around him kind of like helping him message himself and kind of like
Yeah, and
filling
that
in
and that
behind his
certainly
gas.
felt mental, but there's also like, well, maybe he's just tired. I don't know.
Right, and just the fact that that's always happening for the president of the United States, right? I mean, there's
Well, not
always
Donald Trump.
well, I mean, no,
Trump
no,
just
I mean,
rips.
totally with Donald Trump, he'll say
Yeah,
something insane, and the
yeah,
people will come around and kind of like massage it back in the direction of
sure.
policy or whatever, and that's the kind of stuff we don't need to endlessly relitigate, the move of last year. I guess the one thing, I mean, and I hate even talking this much about politics for the whole thing because really it's a personal story about him. But I guess the one other political thing that we need to say in the context of all of this is like going forward. Well, I guess two things I would say. One thing about the kind of horrible nitty gritty politics stuff that we have to talk about, which is that it's just kind of underscores again the difficulty that Kamala Harris has now, like in terms of her political future, just
Sure.
because she more than anybody else was like in the room working with him like in a personal position to kind of stick up for him and his acuity and his readiness and all these sorts of things. And on the one hand, it's like, what's she supposed to say? She's not going to go out and sandbag her boss in real time. On the other
Right.
hand, it's hard for her to come out and explain why all through that period she, along with the rest of the apparatus, was saying no. He's there. He's got it all going. And I mean, like, if it hadn't been for that debate, in the world that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and I guess all of us would have rather had than the world that we'd be in than the world that we're in right now. In our ideal world, going back a year ago, this would be nation shaking news, right? Because Joe
Of
Biden would be the
course.
president again, and we'd be dealing
Assuming
with
he
all
had won,
this.
yeah.
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 Well, like I say, in our ideal world.
All right, too.
But
Well, look, yeah, no, I hear you. It again, I go back to what you just said, which is like what is was Harris supposed to just sandbag her boss?
it's a
but
no-win situation for her.
it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard.
But I
Go ahead,
mean,
sorry.
it's a no-win situation, but like that doesn't mean it's not going to like stick around
No,
to
and it
bite her in the
should.
future. Yeah.
Of course. And that's the price you pay, is
Yeah.
that you took that path and now you have to answer questions
Yeah.
for it and
Can,
live with
can
it.
I can I just say one other thing on not
Sure.
the politics of this, which is just like the thing that I keep coming back to when I think about this. And we don't really know fully like what the deal is with this cancer. We know it's quite
Right.
bad. It's, prostate cancer kills a lot
Look,
of
he's
people.
82 years old. He's
Yeah.
got prostate cancer.
And it's
They didn't
aggressive
say treatment.
form.
They didn't say treatment. They said management. People live with prostate cancer. They can live for years managing prostate cancer, but at his age, it's not a great
Yeah,
diagnosis,
like
obviously.
without getting into like prognosticating about all of that. Like the thing that I keep coming back to is just the tragic fact that Biden is likely not going to live to kind of know what his legacy is, right? I mean, like right now you can tell that it's just eating like the fact that is eating him is the end of his presidency. It's the fact that he kind of crash landed out and Donald Trump went back in and the endless relitigation in the press and all these books coming out. I mean, like that is the only fact of his presidency as far as like the current political moment is concerned. And he might not get to see what comes after that and what comes after that. We don't know what his ultimate legacy will be because we don't know how this story ends in the short term. Obviously, if Donald Trump totally crashes the United States basically out of circulation as the power it's been, then Joe Biden's legacy is enabling that to happen. If we kind of get back on the rails and there's life after all of this in a way that we all like and appreciate, then maybe Biden's ultimate legacy is a lot of the good work that he got done while he was president, and nobody
Right.
gets to know what that is now. And it is a tragedy that this is the moment that Biden is enduring as he's enduring all these other things, and we don't know, whether he'll be around to ultimately see how history judges him. I mean, nobody gets to ultimately see how history judges them, I guess. But that's just kind of the tragedy of it all that's kind of going around my head right now.
You know what? That's a good place to end it on. Not much to add to that. Andrew Egger, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it. To the viewers, I appreciate your understanding of this very delicate conversation. We thought it was important enough that we should hop on and quickly discuss it with you all. Curious for your thoughts, feel free to send them along in the feed. And of course, subscribe to the feed. Really appreciate that. And we'll talk to you soon.